Good day and welcome back to another DBZ Dokkan battle video. In this video we are going to be taking a look at the Legendary Existence Challenge for the Legendary Goku GT event. Now obviously this is a pretty interesting one. I think Legendary Existence as a category is pretty rough if I'm honest for the most part. Doesn't have a lot of great synergy across its strongest units, and if you don't actually have the lead, you can struggle to kind of put together a decent team. But we managed to do so here. We run a pretty solid lineup, if I must say so. One that gets the job done quite well. Obviously, we are not running under a full lead, so in that sense, we're only running under 130%. But hey, whatever gets the job done, as you guys know, that's kind of the goal with these videos. If you have the LR in Namek Goku, you're going to have a much easier time. And if you do have him, obviously please set him as your lead. You don't need to follow some wonky build like mine. The simpler you build your teams, the better your teams will be. Generally speaking, you don't need to do 1,000 workarounds to get your teams to work. If you follow a simple team build, you will probably come out with a better result, if not the same result as I do. So in terms of the Legendary Existence category, we'll list the units off, but in terms of our lead, we have the Transforming Goku. Transforming AGL Goku is a really solid unit now. I feel like him and Frieza got their easy A's, were very good, and just haven't really been highlighted since then, I want to say, but both are incredibly dependable units, especially when you run them in the correct way. Now, Transforming AGL Goku obviously being our 130% lead is very important, but another very important thing when it comes to Transforming AGL Goku is actually the fact that he has damage reduction. Now that damage reduction is going to serve him really well, because he's going to definitely need it when we take on the tech phase of full power Super Saiyan 4 Goku. So we definitely do need him to have that damage reduction. It's also very important that you try and get a super with him whenever he's on rotation. Although his damage reduction does go up, those additional supers do really help raise his defense, and it just helps. When you have damage reduction, it's always good, but when you do have slightly higher than normal defense, like in the 200 bracket or wherever, generally then damage reduction becomes very effective in events, because you now have a decent base of raw defense which combines with your damage reduction. Units that have super high damage reduction don't need it, like Golden Frieza for example, but units like Goku definitely do need it, so I would highly suggest that you take him. Obviously, the next unit we're going to talk about is the friend lead. So the friend lead is obviously the Namek Goku. He's very, very good. I know there was a huge amount of debate about him on the Reddit, apparently, or on Twitter or something. I unfortunately am not part of Reddit or Twitter, or at least in terms of like getting into Dokkan debates. So I'm not too certain what people were complaining or not complaining about, but Goku's a very, very good unit, an exceptionally awesome unit that does a lot of great work just across the board. Remember, after he gets hit, he has a guaranteed additional, and he stacks defense on his 12 keys, so Goku can get his defense up very, very quickly, especially if you let him tank some hits. He can raise his defense quite sufficiently, and you shouldn't really have a huge number of issues trying to run him. Generally speaking, he's great in the final phase as well. Huge damage being in type against the Goku. If you can, try and grab 100% friendly, that's always going to help you. But yes, generally speaking, Goku is fantastic for this event. He's fantastic for most events. I really, really like Namek Goku. We also have his active skill, if necessary, so we can always use that as well, along with just a whole mixture of really, really, really solid abilities. So Goku, very awesome. Not to mention he links really well with most units across the board. So generally speaking, he is actually a very, very solid unit to kind of be the backbone of this run. He's going to be very much carrying us for the most part. So Very, very glad to have Goku here. And yeah, overall he's just going to do a great job. Next, we have our good old friend, the God Goku. Now God Goku, well, he is just exceptional now with his EZA. So this is obviously post EZA. He is now 77% damage reduction type against Pure Saiyans. So he's just never going to take damage in any Pure Saiyan event ever again, which is more than fine, honestly speaking. It really helps us out here, and he just floats for the most part throughout the fights. Nothing too crazy, just kind of floating, getting things done. Generally speaking, he also does the really, really cool thing of creating rainbow orbs, which helps out the team. Synergy just helps it with getting ki, and obviously, generally speaking, that's a good thing for the team. He does decent damage himself. His ceiling's not going to be super effective here, but for the most part, he's just a very exceptional unit. And yeah, realistically speaking, he's just fantastic to utilize in all these kind of events, basically. So him, very solid, very, very solid actually, just overall. Then we have the UI Goku. So this is another unit that's not been abandoned in the stretches of time, but I want to say this is a unit that just does a very, very good job. He's very dependable. He obviously stacks attack and defense, which is always something that's super duper helpful. So he stacks attack and defense, which is fantastic. And also he does have the ability that when we fall below 50%, he will transform into his MUI state. Now in his MUI state, his defense does go down slightly, but his offense goes up and he gains evasion. But more importantly, he gains guaranteed evasion for one whole turn. Now his MUI state's good to get early on. If you want to, you can get it midway. Where you don't really want it, or where it doesn't matter so much, is when it is in the final phase, just because at that point basically you can't dodge, so you lose a lot of the benefits of his transformation. But overall, he's just a really good unit. He stacks so quickly, especially if you have dupes in him. And yeah, generally speaking, he's just very, very, very solid. And me personally, I like him a lot. I think he brings a lot to the table. And yeah, he has a decent amount of links with the Namek Goku, so we make them a pairing. Not to mention them both being in type means we're going to have a pretty decent time in the final phase, and we need it. Because we are rocking a little bit of a tender liability, and not a liability because he's ostensibly a bad unit, but just it is a little bit rough for AGL units. And we'll talk about him last, but let's talk about the other rotation. So the other rotation being the movie bosses Tapion alongside the LR Tapion and Minoshia. If you don't have LR Tapion and Minoshia, but you do have the AGL Tapion, then you can just stick the God Goku next to the Tapion. Their damage doesn't matter too much. They're just basically a brick wall. And you can essentially run anyone else in their place. So it's not like the greatest solution, but it is a solution. But AGL Tapion is great. Obviously a massive amount of damage reduction, which always helps out. Raising his defense on his super attack as well. Not to mention he'll do some pretty good damage once you get to a certain health threshold. And you also have the transformation into the giant form to avoid any damage if you get into a bad situation. So overall, Tapion obviously just gives a lot to the team. I think he's a very, very exceptional unit. And the LR Tapion and Minoshia also do something very similar. They're very, very strong units that gives support to the whole team. They support the siblings bond category, which not all of our units are on, but you know, it does really help. Not to mention that they are also just an incredibly good unit. They gain damage reduction, which is fantastic after they fire off additional super attacks. If you can get them to 24 ki, they are basically guaranteed an additional super attack, so they have very good damage reduction at that point. Now the final unit that we have in our run, the very, very, very last unit of the team, and a very good unit, by the way. Not that he's bad in any sense of the word. It's just his typing doesn't really suit him for the final phase. So we have AGL MUI Goku, the LR one, obviously from the 6th anniversary. Nothing wrong with this unit. I have one dupe in him. he's fantastic, does a brilliant amount of damage. However, he is AGL type, and as you all know, in the final phase, you are actually with the inability to evade. So, not being able to evade causes you quite a lot of problems, especially if you're rocking AGL units. Goku's defense is not really high enough, and he doesn't have any other additional defense capabilities. So it kind of does give us quite a few problems. That being said, it's not noticeably the end of the world, and the main reason for it not being the end of the world is the fact that we shouldn't really use a lot of items getting there, and our other rotation is pretty much going to tear through Goku, at least should, hopefully, as long as he doesn't evade all their attacks. So as long as you save your 2 items, you should be able to keep the AGL MUI Goku safe, and you should be able to have a pretty decent time working against the tech full power Goku. So that's the lineup. Obviously, guys, because we are running a 130% lead in the form of transforming Goku, we are a tad bit behind in terms of stats and just overall performance when we consider the units and their stat leads. However, generally speaking, we do alright. We're not, super duper bad or anything like that. And the stat decrease isn't so noticeable. That's because a lot of our units defensively rely a lot on things like evasion. It does affect the speed of the stacking, which is the only real concern. But for the most part, a lot of our units have additional abilities. You have damage reduction on the Tapions, you have evasion on the UI Gokus, and yeah, Namek Goku obviously, doesn't really have much else, but he stacks really quite fast. So yeah, it is definitely, I would say, a challenge to a certain sense. But I definitely think overall, you shouldn't really have that big a problem taking on the legendary existence. Like I said, if you don't have Tapion and Minotia, you can always swap out something to just put MUI Goku, God Goku, oh god, so many Gokus, and you can slot them in there. And you can bring something like the physical UI Goku or something like that, but you can make a plan. Generally speaking, it's not the world's biggest problem. So yeah, it is a pretty stock standard affair, to be honest. I don't think there's too many issues players will have. Of course, it is going to be a little bit of a slog. Technically speaking, running under such a lower lead, you do tend to have lower stats and lower attack stats because of that. But fortunately, I have a couple dupes to make up for it, especially if you find a 100% Namek Goku friend. Generally speaking, you're okay damage-wise. You're not great, you're not going to see these units firing at all cylinders, but you're not bad. You're not going to be left out in the cold or anything like that. So yeah, for the most part, it can obviously be a tiny bit concerning, but I don't think players will struggle too badly as long as they manage their items, manage their units, and prioritize just keeping their rotations set when they can, but don't be afraid to split things up. Fortunately, we don't have a lot of type disadvantage. That's too bad. Generally, when our units do have type disadvantage, they're on a pretty good level. We don't have any major type disadvantage in the int phase, and that's because the tech Goku obviously won't take any damage, having 77% damage reduction. So yeah, it is a little bit intense. I think it took a little bit longer than I'd like. Obviously very little control over whether that happens, but it is something that I did note. It did take a little bit longer than I probably wanted, but it wasn't the end of the world. I don't think it was an unenjoyable experience. I think the team runs well enough, especially if you've got the Tapion brothers. There's very good synergy there. And yeah, generally speaking, I think everything's fine. I think Legendary Existence as a category probably needs a support of some kind or a buff of some kind. A secondary lead also would be great. But yeah, Legendary Existence could be a very fun category. I mean, running the Tapion units and running Goku alongside each other is something pretty nutty. and pretty fun. I mean, I won't lie, it is pretty enjoyable. But yeah, I would definitely say the category itself probably needs a buff of some kind. It needs some kind of like buff or bonus or whatever it is, because yeah, it definitely needs a little bit more to go for it, I think, to really bring it up to speed with some of the other categories. I think it's got some great units that can really work. Getting a easy A for the strength Namek Goku will help. Getting a lot of like good easy A's and things like that will help out this team. But yeah, so yeah, overall, obviously, as you guys can see, we made it to the tech phase. Pretty straightforward stuff, relatively simple. You're going to use the Whis item just in case. But yeah, we made it perfectly fine. We've got 2 AGL units, being the Goku and the MUI Goku, the transforming Goku and the MUI Goku, so we are just being incredibly careful there. But yeah, overall, I had a great time, and yeah, the event was pretty fun. I think if you are like overtly concerned about the legendary existence category, you can maybe wait it out a bit. I'm sure we'll get some new units that'll be added on pretty soon, especially, you know, legendary or Super Saiyan Gokus and things like that. I think are very good units. But yeah, overall, you know, guys, don't panic too much. You should be more than fine. It's a very strong category. There are some options that I didn't take here, so yeah, for the most part, I think, you know, you will be fine as you take on the event. But yeah, Namek Goku really carries the event quite substantially, especially once you get to this tech phase. He's really just chucking down the boss, so you don't have major issues. You know, you don't have like huge problems when you run this Goku. He's just an absolute machine when it comes to that phase. And yeah, that is legendary existence completed and done. That is everything all done and dusted. So we only have a couple category challenges left. Obviously, we'll be tackling those when we can. But yeah, let me know your thoughts and comments down below. Let me know what you guys are struggling with. If you're struggling with anything, how I can help you. And yeah, let me know your thoughts. How are you finding the challenges? I'm glad that they added a whole bunch of category challenges to the Goku event and the Vegeta event. I think it's great. But that's going to be it from me, guys. I hope you enjoyed the video. If you did, leave a like on it. And until next time, bye.